The challenge takes place on a remote island in Norway within the Arctic Circle. 10 contestants, each with basic survival supplies, are dropped off at different locations on the island. They face unpredictable weather and must be vigilant against predators. The last one standing wins $1 million prize. Contestant 1, Rune, arrived by boat. A young entrepreneur. He runs a wilderness survival school. His participation aims to promote his business. Since his arrival, it has been raining non-stop. He decided to build a shelter on higher ground, using 2 sturdy trees to support a waterproof tarp and securing the other corners with branches. After a busy half-day, he managed to create a simple rain shelter. Contestant 2, Anne Mai, a charming young woman, found a large buoy upon landing. She joked about using it to catch a big shark, but focused on building a shelter first. Despite her cheerful appearance, she has struggled with depression for years. Close contact with nature helps ease her condition, and her husband fully supports her participation, hoping it helps her rediscover happiness. She selected a camping spot in the woods, cleared the area, and gathered materials. Next up is Stein, who considers nature her best friend, although she is particularly sensitive to cold. Joining the challenge aims to conquer this weakness. She mentioned finding a treasure on the shore, which she hid in her tent, though the details and the tent setup were not recorded. While others struggled to build shelters in the rain, John was already enjoying hot blueberry tea. He had informed his family that he might be away for a while and not to miss him too much. By using a fallen tree as a beam, John saved time and effort, quickly setting up his shelter and picking blueberries to make tea. With a scenic view of mountains, water, and deer herds, he felt confident about enduring. The 5th contestant, Lasse, an outdoor streamer who usually hosts live streams and sells products from home. He had trained specifically for the challenge, cycling tens of thousands of kilometers alone, learning to cope with solitude and survival skills. Caught by a sudden downpour, he rushed into the woods, quickly setting up a waterproof tarp over a tree and securing it with ropes, creating an efficient makeshift shelter. Facing a large river, he ingeniously collected rainwater by attaching his water bottle to his tent, instead of fetching water from the river. Anmai has already set up her tent. She has been busy until now, without a break, and has gone out with her water bottle. Passing through the bushes, she reached a lake and couldn't resist drinking several gulps from the clear water. Meanwhile, Lasse, who was gathering materials to start a fire, found a bird's nest. Despite feeling a bit sorry for the birds, he quickly took it. Later, he found a mushroom on the grass but decided against picking it due to its bright red color. After returning to his shelter, he started working on making fire, and finally got it going. Before dark, he gathered more branches to make a natural bed and drank some collected rainwater before sleeping. The first day in the wilderness passed like this. Magnus fits neither category. He is simply a food lover. His hobby is eating, and he has a large appetite. While others focused on building shelters, he started fishing with a net to secure food. After setting the net, he realized his gear was getting wet and hurried to move everything under a tree. He covered his equipment with a waterproof tarp to create a conical rain shelter and moved things around to avoid the rain. In frustration, he cut a tree trunk to increase coverage and used branches to secure the tent corners, making a makeshift shelter. However, his skills were lacking, and the tent collapsed as soon as he entered. Christian made a lively entrance, shouting from adrenaline as he stepped off the boat. He has a happy family of 3 and often goes camping with his wife and child. To win this challenge, he even lived alone in the wild for a while. However, finding his landing spot in a swamp, he wondered what grudge he might have against the production team. As the rain intensified, he decided to focus on finding a suitable spot to build a shelter instead of dwelling on negative thoughts. When the camera turned to Stein, she finally started filming the shelter construction. She first set up a horizontal beam between a tree and a mound of dirt, then placed branches on both sides to support a simple A-frame structure, boasting to the camera while working. The guy examining moose droppings is named Emil. If he can hunt a deer, he's sure to win the championship. His goal is to become the ruler of this deserted island, living alongside bears and wolves. He has a beautiful wife and a cute son. His greatest hobby is being close to nature. His wife recently became pregnant with their second child. He joined this challenge to earn money for baby formula. Worried about missing his family too much, he brought photos of his wife and son, which made him homesick. Eventually, he became so overwhelmed with loneliness that he cried. Alan was luckier than others. He found a water source as soon as he landed. The favorable start boosted his confidence, and he decided to set up camp nearby. However, collecting materials for a fire drove him crazy because days of rain had soaked everything. Remembering that the challenge was for a cash prize to provide a better life for his daughter helped calm his frustration. But now, winning the challenge means he must first learn to enjoy solitude. Levi was the last to arrive at the battleground. He immediately started scouting his territory and collected some dry birch bark for fire. On his way back, he spotted many reindeer tracks and felt hopeful about life. Just as a heavy rain began, he quickly ran back to camp and hung a tarp from a tree to create a shelter from the rain. The tasks of making fire and building a shelter had to wait until the rain stopped. On the second day of the challenge, 10 contestants remained. Levi went early to the river to find a spot for fishing, hoping to catch a fish to fill his stomach. He calls himself a master at lure fishing, nicknamed the Little Prince of Fishing, but now he only had a gill net. When he was at a loss, he spotted a plastic barrel washed ashore. He filled a smaller barrel with sand to weigh down the bottom of the net and tied the larger barrel on top as a buoy. This setup allowed the net to open automatically when submerged in water. It was a well-thought-out plan, but catching fish still depended on luck. When Levi pulled up the net, he felt its heavy weight and was thrilled to see his fishing method succeed. Then he strolled around looking for a suitable site to build a shelter. He found 2 large trees 500 meters from camp, tied a rope between them, and draped a tarp over it. He secured the corners, completing a simple shelter. Although the quality was so poor, he couldn't bear to look at it when the wind blew. The camera moves to big-bearded Lasse. He wakes up to find he has a nosebleed and casually grabs a small bug to eat. Yesterday's campsite is nearly flooded, so today he must choose a new site near a water source not far from the old one. Then he starts cutting trees like crazy, planning to build a sturdy triangular wooden hut with a solid wood single bed raised off the ground. Humming a tune, he skillfully chops wood and quickly assembles the bed, which fits him perfectly. The main part of the shelter uses larger tree trunks, aligned and bound together, then erected into a triangular shape. A horizontal beam with a waterproof cloth is added, and the new shelter is complete. He gathers branches and leaves for the bed, hoping the natural mattress will prevent nosebleeds tonight. Rune is scouting the terrain for a suitable spot and finally finds a wind-sheltered place on the beach. He digs a hole, buries several tree trunks, and bends and ties them into a dome shape covered with a waterproof cloth. The base is buried in sand, and the top is secured with dry branches, creating a yurt-like structure. After working through the night, Stein finishes her shelter too, sitting inside with a sense of accomplishment. She has always had quirky ideas and loves doing what she enjoys, making her extraordinarily happy. By the third day, the sun finally comes out after 2 days of rain. Lasse takes a comfortable bath, enjoying the sun and the beach. While others worry about food, he relies on fishing, slowly feeling the weight as he pulls up the net, and the fish emerge. Besides the net, he has set several fishing lines, and his expression shows his abundant catch. On the 4th day, a cold wind wakes Lasse, and he realizes the shelter's door faces the wind. He decides to build a wind-blocking wall at the entrance. He starts with a frame of 4 branches, then layers wood inside. However, he soon gets distracted, pulls out a ukulele he had made earlier, and starts playing, completely forgetting his task. The camera shifts to Levi, who looks at his house nearly blown away by the wind. He decides to upgrade it right after breakfast. However, a scene at the river unsettles him. His fishing net is entangled in rocks, and despite efforts, he can't free it. With no other choice, he removes his shoes and steps into the water. After finally dragging the net ashore, he finds it empty, which instantly dampens his spirits. The next day, he checks the net again, only to find it still empty. Levi's spirit breaks completely. Emil, too, seems despondent. He builds a large stone fireplace by the river. The crew's boat appears, creating a splash. Surprisingly, Lasse is the one who leaves, explaining that recent days have been too hard and he misses his wife. Meanwhile, John seems to be on a lucky streak, catching 7 fish. To store the surplus, he specifically builds a fish pond, ensuring a fresh supply daily. As he enjoys his meal by the sea, suddenly 3 reindeer appear in the nearby forest. He grabs his camera and chases after them. Magnus has been here for 5 days, and without food, he might have to leave early. He prays while securing the fishing net's branches. As he slowly pulls the net from the water and sees his only food in days, tears of joy stream down his face. Back at the shelter, he quickly sets up one fish to smoke from the roof and fries another in a pan. With food, he feels he can last another 3 months. Rune also has some luck as his previously set fishing nets finally yield fish. He must strip and enter the icy water to retrieve the fish. Therefore, he decides to build a raft to fish in deeper waters. He saws driftwood from the beach into equal lengths, chops notches with an axe, and fits the planks together. He believes this raft will ensure a continuous catch, but it starts leaking and sinking as soon as he steps on it. Fishing in the lake's center is out of the question today. He must rebuild. Since having food, Magnus starts neglecting his duties to show off his woodworking skills. He says wood carving helps adjust his mood. After a while, feeling hungry, he takes down the smoked fish from the roof to taste it. With one bite, he is utterly captivated. Anmai has not been seen for several days. Her shelter is impressively built with a sturdy triangular structure, a comfortable bed, and neatly arranged firewood. However, consecutive busy days have tired her out, and a sudden visit from her period has left her feeling weak. This might be the most luxurious shelter this season. Christian is constructing a new home with a native style. He builds a spherical frame around a large tree using branches and leaves an entrance on the leeward side. He weaves thin branches to fill the gaps and covers it with a waterproof fabric for warmth. While busy, he suddenly hears a strange noise, a group of meat transport vehicles visiting. He dreams of catching a champion reindeer, but hesitates to act. Steina has cleaned up and goes to check her fishing net. It takes a lot of effort to pull it up, only to find it tangled and fishless. After reorganizing the net, she tells herself to calm down, but slips and fills her shoes with water. Frustrated, she continues setting the net with wet shoes. Back at the shelter, she quickly takes off her shoes and socks to warm her feet by the fire. On day 6, Stein declares it her special holiday. She has her period too. Levi finally has his moment. Before this, he lived in a leaky house. Today, holding on to his last hope, he checks the fishing net and feels its heavy weight. The catch makes him ecstatic, providing enough to feed his family and make up for previous days of starvation. Back at camp, he eagerly cooks the fish and starts a mukbang on a picnic blanket. After 4 days of hunger, his stomach is finally satisfied. Christian is busy relocating, taking down the old shelter's waterproof fabric. He bids farewell to the old and small, and tops his new shelter with the fabric, hoping it brings new hope. Stein seemed devastated, but now she appears cheerful, having successfully set her net, which gives her a great sense of achievement. Seeing the approaching storm, Levi quickly moves large logs to secure his tent. Anmai also hurries to reinforce her shelter and checks the fishing net, securing it with stones to prevent it from being swept away by the tide. Stein brought some stones from afar to tightly secure her tent as darkness approached. Rune, undeterred by his bare legs, rushed to save his fishing net. Everyone was racing against time, except for Magnus, who was sipping tea inside the shelter, enjoying the calm before the storm. That night, the storm swept over the Norwegian island. After a restless night, the world seemed exceptionally fresh on the morning of the 7th day. Magnus suddenly announced his withdrawal from the competition, saying the challenges were too much to bear. Though his body could endure, he felt defeated mentally and preferred to withdraw gracefully. Since arriving, Alan had been rarely seen on camera. He explained that filming was challenging due to constant wind and rain, making survival tough enough without needing extra activities. After setting up his camera, he began his fishing for the day. Upon lifting the net, he shouted with excitement, not even pausing to pick out the fish before celebrating on camera, then showing off his catch. After returning to the shelter, he started cooking the fish, probably cooking all 6 since he had only eaten wild berries for 8 days. He eagerly grabbed the cooked fish with his hands and stuffed it into his mouth, turning a pot of fish into what seemed like a hand-grabbed meal. After eating, he finally had the energy to tidy up his shelter and build a sturdy wooden bed. He placed 2 logs on the ground as bed legs, sawed planks to equal lengths for the bed base, checked the fit, and made it level and comfortable. The bed legs were slightly unstable, so he drove a nail at each end to secure them and carefully smoothed any protruding areas. Finally, he laid out his sleeping bag, completing the bed. However, Rune's bed-making skills were more advanced. He started with a layer of stones, topped with moss, repeating the process to create a bed that was sturdy, soft, and elastic, almost like a memory foam mattress. Sitting on the bed, he pondered how to improve his catch using the fishing net. He decided to enlarge the net holes with scissors, aiming only for big fish. Cutting the net seemed simple, but where to cut was crucial. A wrong cut could ruin the net. After a morning of work, he eagerly took the adjusted net to the lake. He tied a large stone to each end of the net and threw it into deeper waters for better stretch and reach. He had a continuous supply of food, with 3 fish stewing in the pot and 3 more lying beside him, all of decent size, leisurely waiting for the pot to boil, giving a sense of a wilderness vacation. The camera turns to Stein. She says her intuition tells her that today she will catch a fish. Sure enough, after pulling up the fishing net, she catches one. Although it's small, it's better than nothing. She puts the fish into her water bottle and happily heads home. She gestures that she will divide the fish into 4 meals. However, as a vegetarian, she is unsure how to start cutting it. After struggling for a while without success, she decides to simply stew it whole. After cooking, she tries a bite and instantly falls in love with the taste. To catch more fish, she picks up a piece of driftwood from the beach to make a fishing rod, attaching 6 hooks at intervals. She secures one end at the shore, weighs down the other end with a large stone, and hopes for a catch. On the other side of the sea, Emil is daydreaming, celebrating his birthday alone. Every year his family sings him a birthday song, but now he is alone on this deserted island, which makes him miss the warmth of home even more. Perhaps blessed by fate, he finds an edible fungus. He quickly boils water back at the shelter, slices the fungus with a knife, crushes it with the handle, pours the hot water into a cup, and stirs with the knife to finish. Today marks a crucial point in the 10-person wilderness survival challenge. The medical team will check the remaining 8 participants. Levi has been a bit distracted lately. To keep his mind off things, he scans the fishing net from the shore, eyes nearly popping out, yet sees no fish. Still hopeful, he pulls up the net and finds a few fish attached. He grabs the fish, smashes them against a rock to kill them, then gathers the rest of the net, surprised to find 3 more fish. Anmai hasn't been seen in a while, living a leisurely life. Clothes are drying outside her hut, and smoked fish hangs inside while she lazily lies in bed. Feeling a bit hungry after lounging, she starts a fire and places the fish on a grill. After preparing breakfast, she takes her meal to enjoy by the seaside. True to her meticulous nature, she appreciates the ritual. Full, she decides to make a hammock, using the same principles as a fishing net. She ties a branch and starts the lengthy weaving process, then hangs it between 2 trees, completing the task. With food secured, Levi turns to building a new house. He cuts down several large trees and binds them together with rope to form a large tripod. He then attempts to transfer the waterproof fabric from his old house to the new one, only to find it's not large enough. He considers reducing the frame of the new house. After measuring with a stick between 2 trees for a long time, he finds it still unsuitable. As night falls, he has no choice but to cover the day's shelter with the waterproof fabric and make do for the night. On the 10th morning, the medical team visited Levi's shelter. After a series of checks, they decided he must withdraw from the competition. His intake had been severely inadequate, and he had expended too much energy. His body could no longer cope. He graciously accepted the outcome and began his journey home. Christian's approach was certainly unique. While others struggled to survive on grass for a chance at $1 million, he was indifferent to the moose that could have easily secured his victory. Instead, he simply glanced at bird droppings on the beach, lamented nature's cruelty, and leisurely walked away. Meanwhile, Anmai had made a new catch. Although the gigantic buoy didn't net her a shark, it did bring her 2 small fish. She skillfully cleaned them and couldn't wait to cook them back at camp. Stein, on her way to check the fishing net, muttered that if she didn't catch any fish today, she would quit. She pulled up the super fishing rod she had set yesterday but caught nothing. The net in the water was also empty. After 10 days, she had only eaten 1 fish. Hungry and chopping wood, she mused over her hardships. To fill her stomach and have energy to work, she grabbed a handful of rotting berries and stuffed them into her mouth. She comforted herself by imagining it was an egg salad sandwich, which seemed tastier. She took another bite, and this time, it tasted like fries. Her spirit of making the best of a bad situation was admirable. but it was unclear how much longer she could endure. John went fishing again. After catching a batch of fish, he decided to maintain the net. He would clean, dry, and repair any holes. After cleaning the fish, he proudly showed off his catch to everyone. Alan had not caught anything with his net for several days. He decided to try deep water fishing using a rope. He tied hooks at intervals along the rope and added a plastic bottle filled with stones at the end for weight. He secured the rope to a tree stake on the shore, gave the bottle a lucky kiss, and threw it far into the water. He ended up catching himself and had to retrieve and adjust the setup. Whether he would catch any fish was now up to fate. Under the beautiful glow of the sunset, Stina was checking her fishing net. She desperately wanted a fish. However, heaven showed no mercy. Lacking protein, she continued to deplete her fat reserves. Now, she was so thin that her pants barely fit. After some thought, she decided to give herself one last day. Anmai was not doing well either. The long rains kept her shelter damp. She decided to move to a drier location. On the third day, she set off early to find a new campsite. Finally, she found a suitable place for a new shelter, but quickly left the troubled spot after getting scared. Meanwhile, Stina had built a giant tripod, despite not having eaten for several days. She called it her party tent, planning to celebrate with friends if she won. After completing it, she checked her fishing catch but caught no fish, so she went back to eating grass. The meal was colorful but severely lacked protein. After her last supper, she took one last look at the beautiful place and decided to withdraw from the competition. Suddenly, 2 boats were dispatched by the production team because Anmai also could not hold on anymore. Her new campsite had bear tracks and a severe lack of food. Thus, both female contestants withdrew on the 12th day, leaving 5 contestants. While others were still worrying about food, Rune was considering nutritional balance. He joyfully foraged for mushrooms in the grass, but unexpectedly, they were spoiled due to the freezing temperatures. This gave him a sense of urgency, so he sped up building a raft to fish in deeper waters. John was not short of food. He grabbed a fish from the fish pond for breakfast. A few days ago, he found a large oil drum on the beach and planned to transform it into a stove. He would make a hole on top to smoke fish and one at the bottom for adding firewood. The final result was impressive, making me hungry just by watching. On the 13th day, Alan had been surviving on blueberries. He felt dizzy and unstable several times while picking them, which made him consider withdrawing. But after enduring so many days, he was reluctant. He decided to check his catch one last time. It seems that luck was on his side, as he found a small fish that reignited his hope. After several days of hard work, Rune's raft was finally ready. He eagerly stood on it and slowly paddled to the deep waters. When he returned to the shore, he had 3 fish. Christian was processing a frog he had caught during a jungle adventure the previous night. To avoid poisonous glands, he skinned the frog. After cleaning, it was time to eat. He had not had meat in a long time, and it was satisfying. His fishing net had not been productive lately, so he truly crafted a fish trap. First, he made a circle, then used branches to create a cone shape, and finally filled the gaps with vines. He took it to the sea with high hopes and then began to play the guitar. Christian now regrets giving up moose meat as the temperature continues to drop. He hasn't caught anything with his fishing net for days. To stay in the competition for $1 million, he decided to try eating pine bark. He gathered a large amount, took it home, and cooked the inner bark with some leaves. It looked appetizing but tasted like chewing wool, though it was quite filling. The weather also affected Rune. Although he has a raft to fish in deeper waters, his recent catches have been disappointing. Now, he relies on berries to stave off hunger. To maximize his harvest before the berries freeze, he crafted a berry picker. He made a frame with neatly arranged small sticks and attached a row of scythe-like blades at the bottom. He then made a small box out of birch bark and mounted it to the frame. Its effectiveness was proven when he gently lifted berries directly into the picker, significantly increasing his efficiency and quickly filling a large bag. In contrast to Rune's handiwork, John's skills were also impressive. During a morning walk, he found 2 wooden planks and a small piece with nails in it. After removing and counting 15 nails, he sawed the long planks into equal-sized blocks, added 2 crossbeams, and fixed 2 tripods as legs. His creation, a beautiful small dining table, was complete. Sitting at the table, drinking beer, and looking at photos, he began to miss his family. Today was his daughter's 13th birthday. He carved this memorable date on a tree and sent blessings to his daughter through the show. Despite having ample food and even chilled beer, homesickness made him consider quitting. Soon after, the cruise boat appeared. Just as I felt sorry for him, I saw Emil on the shore. He said he had survived 17 days in the wild, but now longed for his wife, children, and bread. He waved goodbye and quietly went home without any gifts. On the 17th day of the challenge, only 4 contestants remained. Alan was confident in his new fishing line, but it seemed his plan still failed. He didn't expect a big surprise waiting for him at home. 3 reindeer just 5 meters from his shelter. He then made a nameplate for his house, carved his name on it, cooked a pot of blueberry jam as ink, and happily hung it on his door after applying the color. Day 19 quickly arrived. Despite rough seas, Rune decided to go fishing to fill his belly. He rowed his wobbly raft to the fishing spot, skillfully speared a fish onto a stick, and reset his net before heading home with his catch. He cooked the small fish with berries in a pot, eating while pondering his future. As the weather grew colder and food harder to find, he wondered how much longer he could last. John was also feeling low. He kept his fire blazing, reflecting on the monotony of the past days. His homesickness grew so strong over the next few days that he even packed away his net, ultimately defeated by loneliness, despite being one of the strongest contenders this season. The camera then turned to Christian, who mentioned he hadn't looked in a mirror for 20 days. Although the crew provided a small mirror, he didn't want to see his rugged appearance. Despite having a toothbrush and clean clothes, he chose to live primitively. In contrast, Alan was much neater, grooming himself in the mirror. However, after days without food, he too considered quitting, struggling with the combined forces of loneliness and hunger. Rune was the first to give in, understandably so given his slight frame. At the sight of the crew, he knew he was finally free. On day 21, disaster struck John. His stored fish were stolen, likely by seabirds. He set fish guts on a rock as bait and crafted a bird trap with his net, hoping to catch a few birds to improve his meals. After a while, he checked the trap, but to his disappointment, no seabirds were caught. Alan's mood was erratic, sometimes happy, sometimes sad. Today's rare sunny skies delighted him, and he sang while boiling water, though his mood soon dropped again. It was his 4th week here, the first adjusting, the second strategizing, the third managing his mindset. He carved the 20-second notch on his stick, hoping to last another week. The camera switched to Christian, who was collecting berries. He ate as he gathered, childlike with juice-stained hands. After spending the morning filling his pot, he tirelessly collected firewood, quickly burning off the calories from the berries. He had been surviving on pine bark and berries, desperately craving protein. John was different. His worries were never about stolen fish, as he held another in his hand. Yet, he considered quitting due to homesickness. Suddenly, Alan's distant singing, meant to combat loneliness, filled the air. It was unclear if it helped, but the next morning, Alan was seen smiling by the shore. Soon, a crew boat arrived to pick him up. Before leaving, he took the door sign as a memento of cherished memories. By day 25, the Arctic Circle was entering winter. John watched the mountains gradually covered by snow and decided to insulate his shelter after cooking. He neatly cut lichen with a stone knife and filled the fireplace gaps with mud. Having prepared his shelter, he looked forward to the freezing conditions, hoping it would force others out and bring him closer to the $1,000,000 prize. Meanwhile, Christian looked like a golden lion. Prepared to win, he stockpiled firewood under his bed. The next day, he showed off his weight loss. He had lost at least 20 kilograms, leaving his belt too loose. To keep going, he needed to find food, and soon discovered fresh reindeer droppings on the ground. John's days were more comfortable with fish to eat and a fire to warm him, but thoughts of quitting due to homesickness haunted him. He speculated about the remaining number of participants, realizing quitting now would be too advantageous for the others. He resolved to hold on until day 30. On day 28, as the snow grew heavier and the cold intensified, both men felt each day was a year. Christian's net was frozen, yet he managed to catch 2 fish, giving him a glimpse of victory. By day 30, John's net had been empty for days. He ventured into the forest for plants to stave off hunger but disliked the taste of grass. He tried eating a long type of grass instead. If he couldn't find new food, could he keep going? Christian, driven by extreme hunger, finally acted on a deer. He first cut open its skull to extract the brain for its fat content. Then he sawed off the antlers to bring home for a big stew. The rest of the deer's meat was inedible, rotten, and covered with maggots. John is planning a big project on the other side. He wants to build a steam room out of branches to form a dome, then covers it with a waterproof fabric. Finally, he heats stones and places them in water inside the tent. With everything ready, John strips down and enters the tent, happily drinking beer and enjoying the sauna. On day 35, Christian, he takes out his last 2 fish, but accidentally starts a fire. Fortunately, the fire is small and quickly controlled, only slightly burning his beard and creating a hole in his sock. He sews the hole, showing off sewing skills likely learned from a technical school. Back to John, who dislikes eating grass, he decides to continue fishing. He casts his line while reinforcing his resolve to last at least 40 days. At night, to combat loneliness, he sings songs that only make him miss home more. After much effort, he manages to soothe himself to sleep. The crucial 40th day arrives with John feeling lost and Christian smoking a homemade pipe. By day 43, the Norwegian island is completely snowy, with ice forming on stones and branches, and the water surface soon to freeze. Christian, enduring frost-bitten fingers, collects firewood for a grand bonfire party he holds that night. John celebrates his impending victory in his unique way, making a totem pole from a deer antler he found, decorating it with more antlers, and raising the pole high. He dances excitedly around his creation. After dancing, he takes out a satellite phone, declaring he has achieved his goals, and it's about time to leave. On the shore, as the production team's boat appears, it's Christian who stands there, tearfully packing gifts for his family and bidding farewell to the site as he begins his journey home. Although he lost at the last minute, he tried his best. On the 45th day, John finally wins the championship. Unaware, he cooperates with the medical team for a checkup. When he sees his wife and daughter appear, he can't control his tears. He shows his wife around the campsite and shows his daughter the birthday carvings, sharing his longing for them during these days. The long separation proves worthwhile as John demonstrates his strength, wins the prize, and secures a better life for his family.